Sacred Bhadra Purnima day, and we're going to offer this Krishna book reading in her honor. So if you will, turn to chapter 40, all of you online, that's chapter 40, Prayers by Akrura. And if you'll notice below the screen, the subtitles are there, so that will help you to follow along. Chapter 40, Prayers by Akrura. Akrura offered his prayers as follows. My dear Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, because you are the supreme cause of all causes, and the original, inexhaustible personality Narayan. From your navel a lotus flower grows, and from that lotus, Brahma, the creator of the universe, is born. Since Brahma is the cause of this universe, you are the cause of all causes. The elements of this cosmic manifestation, earth, water, fire, air, ether, ego, and the total material energy, as well as nature, the marginal energy, the living entities, the mind, the senses, the sense objects, and the demigods who control the affairs of the cosmos are all produced from your body. You are the supersoul of everything, but no one knows your transcendental form.
Everyone within this material world is influenced by the modes of material nature. Even demigods like Lord Brahma, being covered by the influence of material nature, do not exactly know your transcendental existence beyond the cosmic manifestation of the three modes of material nature. Great sages and mystics worship you as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original cause of all living entities, all cosmic manifestation, and all demigods. They worship you as all-inclusive. Some of the learned Brahmanas also worship you by observing Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. They offer different kinds of sacrifices in the names of the different gods. And there are others also who are fond of worshiping transcendental knowledge. They are very peaceful, and after giving up all kinds of material activities, they engage in the sacrifice known as Jnana Yagya, the philosophical search for you.
There are also devotees known as Bhagavatas who worship you as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After being properly initiated in the method of Panchatantra, they decorate their bodies with tilaka and engage in worshipping your different forms of Vishnu Murti. There are others also known as Saivatis, followers of different acharyas who worship you in the form of Lord Shiva.
It is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita that worship of demigods is also indirectly worship of the Supreme Lord. But such worship is not orthodox, because the worshipable Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. Demigods such as Brahma and Shiva are incarnation of the material qualities, which are also emanations from the body of Narayana. Actually, there was no one existing before the creation except Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The worship of a demigod is not on the same level as worship of Narayana.
Akrura said, although the minds of those who are devotees of the demigods are fixed on a particular demigod, because you are the supersoul of all living entities, including the demigods. Worship of the demigods indirectly goes to you. Sometimes, after flowing down from the mountains during the rainy season, small rivers fail to reach the sea. Some reach the sea and some do not. Similarly, the worshippers of the demigods may or may not reach you. There is no guarantee. Their success depends on the strength of their worship.
According to the Vedic principles, when a worshipper worships a particular demigod, he also conducts some ritual for Narayana, Yajneswara. For, as it is mentioned in the Bhagavad-Gita, the demigods cannot fulfill the desires of their worshippers without the sanction of Narayana or Krishna. The exact words used in the Bhagavad-Gita are Mayaiva Bihitan Hi Tan, which mean that the demigods can award some benediction after being authorized by the Supreme Lord. When a demigod worshipper comes to his senses, he can reason as follows. The demigods can offer benedictions only after being empowered by the Supreme Lord. So why not worship the Supreme Lord directly? Such a worshipper of the demigods may come to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but others who take the demigods as all in all cannot reach the ultimate goal.
Akrura continued to pray, My dear Lord. Akrura continued to pray, My dear Lord, the whole world is filled with the three material modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. Everyone within this material world is covered by these modes, from Lord Brahma down to non-moving plants and trees. My dear Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you because you are beyond the influence of the three modes. Except for you, everyone is being carried away by the waves of these modes. My dear Lord, fire is your mouth, the earth is your feet, the sun is your eyes, the sky is your navel, and the directions are your ears. Space is your head. The demigods are your arms, the ocean and the seas are your abdomen, and the winds and the air are your strength and vitality. All the plants and herbs are the hairs on your body, the clouds are the hair on your head, the mountains are your bones and nails, the days and nights are the blinking of your eyelids, Prajapatis is your genital, and the rains are your semen.
My dear Lord, all living entities, including different grades of demigods and different grades of overlords, kings and other living entities, are resting in you as part and parcel of the big unit. One cannot know you by experimental knowledge. One can simply understand your transcendental existence to be like the great ocean, in which different grades of living entities are included, are like the udumbara fruit, out of which small mosquitoes come. My dear Lord, whatever eternal forms and incarnation you accept, when you appear in this world, are meant for relieving the living entities of their ignorance, illusion, and lamentation. All people, therefore, can appreciate the incarnation and pastimes of your Lordship and eternally glorify your activities. No one can estimate how many forms and incarnation you have, nor can anyone estimate the number of universes that are existing within you.
Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the fish incarnation, who appeared in the ocean of devastation. Although your Lordship is the cause of all causes, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Hayagriva incarnation, who killed the two demons, Madhu and Kaitava. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who appeared as the gigantic tortoise that held up the great mountain Mandara, and who appeared as the boar that rescued the earth planet, which had fallen into the water of the Garbhodaka. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto your lordship, who appeared as Nrsimhadeva to deliver all kinds of devotees from the fearful condition of aesthetic atrocities. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who appeared as Vamanadeva and covered the three worlds simply by extending your lotus feet. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who appeared as the Lord of all the Rigus, in order to kill all the infidel administrators of the world. And let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who appeared as Lord Rama, to kill demons like Ravana. You are worshipped by all devotees as the chief of the Raghu dynasty, Lord Ramachandra. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who appear as Lord Vasudeva, Lord Shankarshana, Lord Pradyumna, and Lord Aniruddha. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who appear as Lord Buddha, to bewilder the atheistic and demoniac. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who appeared as Kalki, to chastise the so-called royal order, degraded to the abominable condition of the malicious, who are below the jurisdiction of Vedic regulative principles.
My dear Lord, everyone within this material world is conditioned by your illusory energy. Under the impression of false identification and false possession, everyone is transmigrating from one body to another on the path of fruitive activities and their reactions. My dear Lord, I am no exception among these conditioned souls. I am falsely thinking myself happy in possessing my home, wife, children, estate, property, and friends. In this way, I am acting as if in a dreamland because none of these are permanent. I am a fool to be always absorbed in thoughts of such things, accepting them as permanent truths. My dear Lord, due to my false identification, I have accepted as permanent everything which is non-permanent, such as this material body, which is not spiritual and is the source of all kinds of miserable conditions. Being bewildered by such concepts of life, I am always absorbed in thoughts of duality, and I have forgotten you, who are the reservoir of all transcendental pleasure. I am bereft of your transcendental association, being just like a foolish creature who leaves a water hole covered by water-nourished vegetation and goes in search of water in the desert.
The conditioned soul wants to quench their thirst, but they do not know where to find water. They give up the spot where there is actual reservoir of water and run into the desert where there is no water. My dear Lord, I am completely incapable of controlling my mind, which is now driven by the unbelieved senses and attracted by the fruitive activities and their results. Therefore, my intelligence is very miserly. My dear Lord, your lotus feet cannot be appreciated by any person in the conditioned stage of the material excel. But somehow or other I have come near your lotus feet, and I consider this to be your causeless mercy upon me. You can act in any way because you are the supreme controller. I can thus understand that when a person becomes able to be delivered from the path of repeated birth and death, it is only by your causeless mercy that he becomes nearer to your lotus feet and becomes attached to your devotional service.
Akrura fell down before the Lord and said, My dear Lord, your transcendental eternal form is full of knowledge. Simply by concentrating one's mind upon your form, one can understand in full knowledge everything that be, because you are the original source of all knowledge. You are the supreme powerful, possessing all kinds of energies. You are the supreme Brahman and the supreme person, supreme controller and master of the material energies. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, because you are Vasudev, the resting place of all creation. You are the all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you are also the Supreme Soul residing in everyone's heart, in giving direction to act. Now, my Lord, I am completely surrendered unto you. Please give me your protection. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 40th chapter of Krishna, Prayers by Akrura.
Chapter 41, Krishna enters Mathura. While Akrura was offering his prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord disappeared from the water, exactly as an expert dramatic actor changes his dress and assumes his original feature. After the Vishnu Murti disappeared, Akrura got out of the water. Finishing the rest of his ritualistic performance, he went near the chariot of Balaram and Krishna and was struck with wonder. Krishna asked whether he had seen something wonderful within the water or in space. Akrura said, "My dear Lord, all wonderful things that are happening within this world, either in the sky or in the water or on the land, are factually appearing in your universal form. So when I have seen you, what wonderful things have I not seen?" This statement confirms the Vedic version that one who knows Krishna knows everything, and that one who has seen Krishna has seen everything, regardless of how wonderful a thing may be. "My dear Lord," Akrura continued, "there cannot be anything more wonderful than your transcendental form. When I have seen your transcendental form, what is there left to see?"
After saying this, Akrura immediately started driving the chariot, and by the end of the day, they reached the precincts of Mathura. As they rode from Vrindavan to Mathura, all the passersby along the way who saw Krishna and Balaram could not help but look at them again and again. In the meantime, the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda and Upananda, had already reached Mathura by going through the forest, and they were awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balaram in a garden. Upon reaching the entrance of Mathura, Krishna and Balaram got down from the chariot and shook hands with Akrura. Krishna informed him, "You may go home now, because we shall enter Mathura later, along with our associates." Akrura replied, "My dear Lord, I can't go to Mathura alone, leaving you aside. I am your surrendered servant. Please do not try to avoid me. Please come along with me, with your elder brother and coward boyfriends, and sanctify my home."
My dear Lord, if you come, my home will be sanctified by the dust of your lotus feet. The water emanating from the perspiration of your lotus feet, namely the Ganges, purifies everyone, including the forefathers, the fire god, and all other demigods. Bali Maharaj has become famous simply by washing your lotus feet, and he enjoyed all the material opulences and later on was elevated to the highest position of liberation. The Ganges water not only sanctifies the three worlds but is carried on the head of Lord Shiva. The ancestors of Bhagiratha sanctified by this water, achieved the heavenly planets. O Supreme Lord of Lords, O Master of the universe, one can achieve piety simply by hearing about your transcendental pastimes. O Supreme Narayana, who are praised with selected verses, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
On hearing this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, replied, Akrura, I shall surely come to your home with my elder brother Balrama, but only after killing all the demons who are envious of the Yadu dynasty. In this way, I shall please all my relatives. Akrura became a little disappointed by these words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he could not disregard the order. He therefore entered Mathura and informed Kamsa about the arrival of Krishna, and then he entered his own home.
After Akrura's departure, Lord Krishna, Balram, and the cowherd boys entered Mathura to see the city. They observed that the gate of Mathura was made of first-class marble, very well constructed, and that the doors were made of pure gold. There were gorgeous orchards and gardens all around, and the whole city was enriched by canals, so that no enemy could enter very easily. They saw that the crossroads were decorated with gold, and that there were copper and brass storehouses for stocking grain. And there were many rich men's houses, all appearing symmetrical as if constructed by one engineer. The houses were decorated with costly jewels, and each and every house had nice compounds of trees bearing fruits and flowers. The corridors and the verandas of the houses were decorated with silk cloth and embroidery work in jewels and pearls. In front of the balcony, windows were pigeons and peacocks walking and cooing. All the grain dealers' shops within the city were decorated with different kinds of flowers and garlands, newly grown grass and pleasing flowers like narcissus and roses. The entrance doors of the houses were decorated with water pots filled with water. A mixture of water, yogurt, sandalwood pulp, and flowers was sprinkled all around the doors, which were also decorated with burning lamps of different sizes. Over all the other doors were decorations of fresh mango leaves and silk festoons.
When the news spread that Krishna, Balrama and the cowherd boys were within Mathura city, all the inhabitants gathered, and the ladies and girls immediately went up to the roofs of the houses to see them. They had been awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balarama with great anxiety, and in their extreme eagerness to see Krishna and Balarama, the ladies did not dress themselves very properly. Some of them placed their clothes in the wrong place. Some anointed their eyes on one side only, and some wore ankle belts only on one leg, or wore only one earring. Thus, in great haste, not even decorated properly, they went to see Krishna from the roofs. Some of them had been taking their lunch, but as soon as they heard that Krishna and Balarama were in the city, they left their eating and ran to the roofs. Some of them were in the bathroom taking their baths, but without properly finishing their baths, they went to see Krishna and Balarama. Some were engaged in feeding their children breast milk, but they put their babies aside and went to see Krishna and Balarama.
Passing by very slowly and smiling, Lord Krishna immediately stole their hearts. He, who is the husband of goddess of fortune, passed through the street like an elephant. For a very long time, the women of Mathura had heard about Krishna and Balram and their uncommon characteristics, and they were very much attracted and eager to see them. Now, when they actually saw Krishna and Balram passing on the street and saw them sweetly smiling, and the ladies' joy reached the point of ecstasy. When they actually saw them with their eyes, they took Krishna and Balram within their hearts and began to embrace them to their fullest desire. Their bodily hair stood up in ecstasy. They had heard of Krishna, but they had never seen him, and now their longing was relieved. After going up on the roofs of the palaces of Mathura, the ladies, their faces joyful, began to shower flowers upon Krishna and Balram. When the brothers were passing through the streets, all the Brahmanas in the neighborhood went out with sandal water and flowers and respectfully welcomed them to the city. All the residents of Mathura began to talk among themselves about the elevated and pious activities of the people of Vrindavan. The residents of Mathura were surprised at the pious activities the cowherd man in Vrindavan must have performed their previous life to be able to see Krishna and Balram daily as cowherd boys.
While Krishna and Balram were passing in this way, they saw a washerman and dyer of clothing. Krishna was pleased to ask him for some nice clothing. He also promised that if the washerman would deliver the nicest dyed cloth to him, the washerman would become very happy, and all good fortune would be his. Krishna was not a beggar, nor was he in need of clothing, but by this request he indicated that everyone should be ready to offer Krishna whatever he wants. That is the meaning of Krishna consciousness.
Unfortunately, this washerman was a servant of Kamsa, and therefore he could not appreciate the demand of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the effect of bad association. He could have immediately delivered the clothing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who promised him all good fortune. But being a servant of Kamsa, the sinful demon, he could not accept the offer. Instead of being pleased, he was very angry and refused the Lord's request, saying, "How is it that you are asking for clothing which is meant for the king?" The washerman then began to instruct Krishna and Balarama, "My dear boys, in the future do not be so impudent as to ask for things which belong to the king. Otherwise, you will be punished by the government men. They will arrest you and punish you, and you will be in difficulty. I have practical experience of this fact. Anyone who unlawfully wants to use the king's property is very severely punished."
On hearing this, Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, became very angry at the washerman, and striking him with the upper portion of his hand, he separated the man's head from his body. The washerman fell down dead on the ground. In this way, Lord Krishna confirmed the statement of the Brahma Samhita that every limb of his body is capable of doing everything he likes. Without a sword, but simply with his hand, he cut off the head of the washerman. This is a proof that the Supreme Lord is omnipotent. If he wants to do something, he can do it without extraneous help.
Hare Krishna. After this ghastly incident, the employees of the washerman immediately dispersed, leaving the clothing. Krishna and Balarama took possession of it and dressed according to their choice. The rest of the clothes were offered to the cowherd boys, who also used them as they desired. What they did not use remained there. Krishna, Balarama, and the boys then proceeded along the main road. In the meantime, a devotee tailor took the opportunity to service and prepared some nice cloths from the cloth for Krishna and Balarama. Thus, being nicely attired, Krishna and Balarama looked like elephants dressed with colored clothing on the full moon day or the dark moon day. Krishna was very much pleased with the tailor and gave him the benediction of Sarupya Mukti, which means that after leaving his body, he would be liberated and would attain a four-handed body, exactly like that of Narayana in the Vaikuntha planets. Krishna also granted him that as long as he would live, he would earn sufficient opulence to be able to enjoy sense gratification. By this incident, Krishna proved that those who are Krishna conscious devotees, Jai, will not be lacking material enjoyment of sense gratification. They will have sufficient opportunity for such things. But after leaving this body, they will be allowed to enter the spiritual planets of Vaikuntha Loka or Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavana.
After dressing nicely, Krishna and Balaram went to the forest of the name Sudama. As soon as they reached the prestige of his house, the florist immediately came out and with a great devotion fell down on his face to offer his respectful obeisances. He offered a nice seat to Krishna and Balaram and asked his assistant to bring out flowers, betel nuts and plums of chandan. The florist welcomed, greatly satisfied the Lord.
The florist, very humbly and submissively, offered his prayers to the Lord, saying, "My dear Lord, because you have come to my place, I think all my forefathers and all my worshipful superiors are pleased and delivered. My dear Lord, you are the supreme cause of all causes of this cosmic manifestation, but for the benefit of the residents of this earthly planet, you have appeared with your plenary portion to give protection to your devotees and annihilate the demons. You are equally disposed as the friend of all living entities. You are the super soul, and you do not discriminate between friend and enemy. Yet you are pleased to give your devotees the special result of their devotional activities. My Lord, I am praying that you please tell me whatever you wish me to do, because I am your eternal servant. If you would order me to do something, it would be a great favor to me." The florist Sudama was greatly pleased within his heart by seeing Krishna and Balaram in his place, and thus as his choicest desire, he made 2 exquisite garlands of various flowers and presented them to the Lord.
Krishna and Balaram were very much pleased with his sincere service, and Krishna offered the florist his salutation and benedictions, which he is always prepared to bestow upon the surrendered souls. When the florist was offered benedictions, he begged from the Lord that he might remain his eternal servant in devotional service, and by such service do good to all living creatures. By this it is clear that a devotee of the Lord in Krishna consciousness should not be satisfied simply by his own advancement in devotional service. He must be willing to work for the welfare of all others.
The example was followed by the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. It is therefore stated in a prayer about them, Lokanam Hitakarino, Vaishnavas or devotees of the Lord are not selfish. Whatever benefits they derive from the Supreme Personality of Godhead as benediction, they want to distribute to all other persons. That is the greatest of all humanitarian activities. Being satisfied with the florist, Lord Krishna not only gave him whatever benediction he wanted, but over and above that he offered him all material opulences, family prosperity, a long duration of life, and whatever else his heart desired within the material world. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 41st chapter of Krishna. Krishna enters Mathura.
Chapter 42, the breaking of the bow in the sacrificial arena. After leaving the florist place, Krishna and Balram saw hunchbacked young women carrying a dish of sandalwood pulp through the streets. Since Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure, he wanted to make all his companions joyous by cutting a joke with the hunchbacked women. Krishna addressed her, O tall young women, who are you? Tell me, for whom are you carrying this sandalwood pulp in your hand? I think you should offer this sandalwood to me, and if you do so, I am sure you will be fortunate. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he knew everything about the hunchback. By his inquiry, he indicated that there was no use in serving a demon. She would do better to serve Krishna and Balram and get an immediate result of the service.
The woman replied to Krishna, My dear Shyama Sundara, dear beautiful dark boy, you may know that I am engaged as a maid servant of Kamsa. I am supplying him pulp of sandalwood daily. The king is very much pleased with me for supplying this nice thing. But now I see that there is no one who can better be served by this pulp of sandalwood than you two brothers. Being captivated by the beautiful features of Krishna and Balarama, their talking, their smiling, their glancing, and their other activities, the hunchbacked woman began to smear all the pulp of sandalwood over their bodies with great satisfaction and devotion. The two transcendental brothers, Krishna and Balarama, were naturally beautiful and had beautiful complexions, and they were nicely dressed in colorful garments.
The upper portions of their bodies were already very attractive, and when the hunchbacked woman smeared their bodies with sandalwood pulp, they looked even more beautiful. Krishna was very much pleased by this service, and he began to consider how to reward her. In other words, in order to draw the attention of the Lord, the Krishna conscious devotee has to serve him in great love and devotion. Krishna cannot be pleased by any action other than transcendental loving service unto him. Thinking like this, Lord Krishna pressed the feet of the hunchbacked woman with his toes and, capturing her cheeks with his fingers, gave her a jerk in order to make her straight. At once, the hunchbacked woman became a beautiful straight girl with broad hips, thin waist, and a very nice, well-shaped breasts. Since Krishna was pleased with the service of the hunchbacked woman, and since she was touched by Krishna's hands, she became the most beautiful girl among women. This incident shows that by serving Krishna, the devotee immediately becomes elevated to the most exalted position in all respects. Devotional service is so potent that anyone who takes it becomes qualified with all good godly qualities. Krishna was attracted to the hunchbacked woman not for her beauty, but for her service. As soon as she rendered service, she immediately became the most beautiful woman. A Krishna-conscious person does not have to be qualified or beautiful. After becoming Krishna-conscious and rendering service unto Krishna, he becomes very much qualified and beautiful.
When the woman was turned by Krishna's favor into an exquisitely beautiful young girl, she naturally felt very much obliged to Krishna, and she was also attracted by his beauty. Without hesitation, she caught the rear part of his cloth and began to pull it. She smiled flutterously and admitted that she was agitated by lusty desires. She forgot that she was on the street and before the elder brother of Krishna and his friends.
She frankly proposed to Krishna, "My dear hero, I cannot leave you in this way. You must." She frankly proposed to Krishna, "My dear hero, I cannot leave you in this way. You must come to my place. I'm already very much attracted to your beauty, so I must receive you well. And since you are the best among males, you must also be very kind upon me." In plain words, she proposed that Krishna come to her home and satisfy her last desires.
Krishna, of course, left a little bit embarrassed in front of his elder sister Balarama, but he knew that the girl was simple and attracted. Therefore, he simply smiled at her words, looking towards his cowherd boyfriends. He replied to the girl, "My dear beautiful girl, I am very much pleased by your invitation, and I must come to your home after finishing my other business here. Such a beautiful girl as you are the only means of souls of persons like us who are away from home and not married. Certainly a suitable girlfriend like you can give us relief from all kind of mental agitation." Krishna satisfied the girl in this way with sweet words. Leaving her there, he proceeded down the street of the marketplace, where the citizens were prepared to receive him with various kind of presentations, especially betel nuts, flowers, and sandalwood bulbs.
The mercantile man in the market worshipped Krishna and Balram with great respect. When Krishna was passing through the street, all the women in the surrounding houses came to see him, and some of the younger ones almost fainted, being captivated by his beauty. Their hair and tight clothing loosened, and they forgot where they were standing.
Krishna next inquired from the citizens as to location of the place of sacrifice. Kansa had arranged for a sacrifice called Dhanur Yagna, and to designate this particular sacrifice, he had placed a big bow near the sacrificial altar. The bow was very big and wonderful and resembled a rainbow in the sky. Within the sacrificial arena, this bow was protected by many constables and watchmen engaged by King Kansa. As Krishna and Balram approached the bow, they were warned not to go nearer, but Krishna ignored his warning. He forcibly went up to immediately took the big bow in his left hand. After stringing the bow in the presence of the crowd, he drew it and broke it in the middle into two parts, exactly as an elephant breaks sugarcane in the field. Everyone present appreciated Krishna's power. The sound of the bow cracking filled with sky and land and was heard by Kansa. When Kansa heard that had happened, he began to fear for his life. The caretaker of the bow, who were standing by watching, became very angry, and with their respective weapons in hand, they rushed towards Krishna, shouting, "Arrest him! Arrest him! Kill him! Kill him!" Krishna and Balram were surrounded. When they understood the sinister motives of guards, they became angry, and taking up the two pieces of the broken bow, they began to beat down all the Kansa's caretakers. While the turmoil was going on, Kansa sent a small group of troops to assist the caretakers, but Krishna and Balram fought with them and also killed them.
After this, Krishna did not proceed further into the sacrificial arena, but went out the gate and proceeded toward their resting camp. Although along the way, he visited various places in Mathura city with great delight. Seeing the activities and wonderful prowess of Krishna, all the citizens of Mathura began to consider the two brothers to be demigods who had come down to Mathura, and they all looked upon them with great astonishment. The two brothers strolled carefree in the street, not caring for the law and order of Kamsa.
As sunset approached, Krishna and Balarama and their cowherd boyfriends went to the outskirts of the city, where all their courts were assembled. Thus, Krishna and Balarama gave some preliminary hints of their arrival to Kamsa, and he could understand what severe type of danger was awaiting for him the next day in the sacrificial arena. When Krishna and Balarama had been going from Vrindavana to Madura, the inhabitants of Vrindavana had imagined the great fortune of the citizens of Madura in being able to see the wonderful beauty of Krishna, who is worshipped by his pure devotees as well as the goddess of fortune. The fantasies of the residents of Vrindavana were now actually realized, for the citizens of Madura became fully satisfied by seeing Krishna.
When Krishna returned to his camp, he was taken care of by servant who washed his lotus feet, gave him a nice seat and offered him milk and palatable dishes. After taking surprise and checking of the next day program, he very peacefully took rest. Thus he passed the night there.
Read the whole paragraph on the other side.
On the other side, when Kamsa came to understand about the breaking of his wonderful bow and the killing of the caretakers and soldiers by Krishna, he could partially realize the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He could realize that the eighth son of Devaki had appeared and that now his death was imminent. Thinking of his imminent death, he was restless the entire night. He began to have many inauspicious visions. He could understand that Krishna and Balaram, who had approached the precincts of the city, were his messengers of death. Kamsa saw various kinds of inauspicious signs while both awake and dreaming. When he looked in the mirror, he could not see his head, although the head was actually present. He saw the luminaries in the sky in double, although there was only one set factually. He began to see holes in his shadow, and he heard a high buzzing sound in his ears. All the trees before him appeared to be made of gold, and he could not see his footprints in dust or muddy clay. In dreams, he saw various kinds of ghosts being carried in a carriage drawn by donkeys. He also dreamed that someone gave him poison, and he was drinking it. He dreamed also that he was going naked with a garland of flowers and was smearing oil all over his body. Thus, as Kamsa saw various signs of death, while both awake and sleeping, he could understand that death was certain, and thus, in great anxiety, he could not rest that night. Just after the night expired, he busily arranged for the wrestling match.
The wrestling arena was nicely cleansed and decorated with flags, festoons, and flowers, and the match was announced by the beating of kettle drums. The platform appeared very beautiful due to streamers and flags. Different types of galleries were arranged for respectable persons, kings, brahmanas, and kshatriyas. The various kings had reserved thrones, and others had arranged seats also. Kamsa finally arrived, accompanied by various ministers and secretaries, and he sat on the raised platform especially meant for him. Unfortunately, although he was sitting in the center of all his governing executive heads, his heart was palpitating in fear of death. Cruel death evidently does not care even for a person as powerful as Kamsa. When death comes, it does not care for anyone's exalted position.
When everything was complete, the wrestlers who were to exhibit their skills before the assembly walked into the arena. They were decorated with nice ornaments and dress. Some of the famous wrestlers were Chanura, Mustika, Shala, Kuta, and Toshala. Being enlivened by the musical concerts, they passed through with great alacrity. All the respectable cowherd men who came from Vrindavan, headed by Nanda, were also welcomed by Kamsa. After presenting Kamsa with the milk products they had brought with them, the cowherd men also took their respective seats by the sides of the king on a platform especially meant for them. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 42nd chapter of Krishna, the breaking of the bow in the sacrificial arena.
Start. Chapter 43. The killing of the elephant Kuvalayapida. After taking their baths and finishing all other morning duties, Krishna and Balram could hear the beating of cattle drums in the wrestling arena. They immediately prepared themselves to proceed to the spot to see the fun. When Krishna and Balram reached the gate of the wrestling arena, they saw a big elephant of the name Kuvalayapida being tended by the caretaker riding on its head. The caretaker was deliberately blocking their entrance by keeping the elephant in front of the gateway. Krishna could understand the purpose of the caretaker, and he prepared himself by tightening his clothes before combating the elephant. He addressed the caretaker in a very grave voice, as resounding as a cloud. You miscreant caretaker, give way and let me pass through the gate. And if you block my way, I shall send you and your elephant to the house of death personified.
The caretaker, being thus insulted by Krishna, became very angry, and in order to challenge Krishna, as was previously planned, he provoked the elephant to attack. The elephant then moved before Krishna like inevitable death. It rushed toward him and tried to catch him with its trunk. But Krishna very dexterously moved behind the elephant. Being able to see only to the end of its trunk, the elephant could not see Krishna hiding behind its legs, but it tried to capture him with its trunk. Krishna again very quickly escaped capture, and he again ran behind the elephant and caught its tail. Holding the elephant by its tail, Krishna began to pull it, and with very great strength he dragged it for at least 25 yards, just as Garuda drags an insignificant snake.
Krishna pulled the elephant from this side to that, from right to left, just as he used to pull a calf by its tail in his childhood. After this, Krishna went in front of the elephant and gave it a strong slap. He then slipped away from the elephant's view and ran to its back. Then, falling down on the ground, Krishna placed himself in front of the elephant's two legs and caused it to trip and fall. Krishna immediately got up, but the elephant, thinking that he was still lying down, tried to push an ivory tusk through the body of Krishna by forcibly stabbing it into the ground. Although the elephant was harassed and angry, the caretaker, riding on its head, tried to provoke it further. The elephant then rushed madly towards Krishna. As soon as it came within the reach, Krishna caught hold of the trunk and pulled the elephant down. When the elephant and caretaker fell, Krishna jumped on the elephant, broke off one of its tusks, and with it killed the elephant and the caretaker also. After killing the elephant, Krishna took the ivory tusk on his shoulder, decorated with drops of perspiration and sprinkled with the blood of the elephant. He looked very beautiful, and thus he proceeded towards the wrestling arena. Lord Balarama took the other tusk of the elephant on his shoulder. Accompanied by their cowherd boyfriends, they entered the arena.
When Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balarama and their friends, he appeared differently to different people according to their different relationships, rasas, with him. Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure and all kinds of rasas, both favorable and unfavorable. He appeared to the wrestlers exactly like a thunderbolt. To the people in general, he appeared as the most beautiful personality. To the females, he appeared to be the most attractive male, Cupid personified, and thus he increased their lust. The cowherd men who were present there looked upon Krishna as their own kinsman. Coming from the same village of Vrindavana, the impious Kshatriya kings who were present saw him as the strongest ruler and their chastiser. To the parents of Krishna, Nanda and Yasoda, he appeared to be the most loving child. To Kamsa, the king of the Bhoja dynasty, he appeared to be death personified.
To the unintelligent, he appeared to be an incapable personality. To the yogis present, he appeared to be the super soul. To the members of the Vrishni dynasty, he appeared to be the most celebrated descendant. Thus appear appreciated differently by different kinds of people present. Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balarama and his cowherd boyfriends. Having heard that Krishna had already killed the elephant Kuvalayapida, Kamsa knew beyond that Krishna was formidable.
He thus became very much afraid of him. Krishna and Balarama had long arms. They were beautifully dressed and they were attractive to all the people assembled there. They were dressed as if they were going to act on the dancing stage, dramatic stage, and they draw the attention of all the people.
The citizens of Mathura city who saw Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, became very much pleased and began to look on his face with insatiable glances, as if they were drinking the nectar of heaven. Seeing Krishna gave them so much pleasure that it appeared as if they were not only drinking the nectar of the seeing his face, but were also smiling the aroma and licking up the taste of his body, and were embracing him and Balaram with their arms. They began to talk among themselves about the two transcendental brothers. For a long time they have heard the beauty and the activities of Krishna and Balaram. But now they were personally seeing them face to face. They thought that Krishna and Balaram were two plenary incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, who had appeared in Vrindavan.
The citizens of Mathura began to recite Krishna's pastimes, his birth as the son of Vasudeva, his being taken into the care of Nanda Maharaj and his wife in Gokula, and all those events leading to his coming to Mathura to favor them. They spoke of the killing of the demon Putana as well as killing of Trinavrata, who came as a whirlwind. They also recalled the deliverance of the two twins brothers from within the Yamala Arjuna trees. The citizens of Mathura spoke among themselves. Sankachuda, Kesi, Dhenukasura, and many other demons were killed by Krishna and Balarama in Vrindavan. Krishna also saved all cowherdmen of Vrindavan from a devastating fire. He chastised the Kaliya snake in the water of Yamuna, and he curbed the false pride of the heavenly king Indra. Krishna held up the great Govardhan hill in one hand for 7 continuous days and saved all the people of Gokula from incessant rain, hurricane and hailstorms. They also began to remember other enlivening activities. The damsels of Vrindavan were so much pleased by seeing Krishna's beauty and participating in his activities that they forgot troubles of material existence. By seeing Krishna and thinking of him, they forgot all sort of fatigue. The Mathura citizen discussed the dynasty of Yadu, saying that because of Krishna's appearance in this dynasty, the Yadu would remain the most celebrated family in the whole universe. The citizens of Mathura then began to talk about Balram. They spoke of his very beautiful lotus petal eyes, and they remarked of him, "This boy has killed the Pralamba demon and many other also." While they were thus talking about the activities of Krishna and Balram, they heard the vibrations of different bands announcing the wrestling match.
The famous wrestler Chanura then began to talk with Krishna and Balram. "My dear Krishna and Balram," he said, "we have heard about your past activities. You are great heroes, and therefore the king has called you. We have heard that your arms are very strong. The king and all the people present here desire to see a display of your wrestling abilities. A citizen should be obedient and please the mind of the ruling king. Acting in that way, the citizen attains all kinds of good fortune. One who does not care to act obediently is made unhappy because of the king's anger. You are cowherd boys, and we have heard that while tending your cows in the forest, you enjoy wrestling with each other. We wish, therefore, for you to join with us in wrestling, so that all the people present here, including the king, will be pleased."
Krishna immediately understood the purpose of Chanura's statement, and he prepared to wrestle with him. But according to the time and circumstances, he spoke as follows: "You are a subject of the king of the Bhojas, and you live in the jungle. We are also indirectly his subjects, and we try to please him as far as possible. This offer of wrestling is a great favor of his, but the fact is that we are simply boys. We sometimes play in the forest of Vrindavana with our friends who are our own age. We think that to combat persons of equal age and strength is good for us, but to fight great wrestlers like you would not be good for the audience. It would contradict their religious principles." Krishna thus indicated that the celebrated strong wrestlers should not challenge Krishna and Balarama to fight.
In reply to this, Charu said, "My dear Krishna, we can understand very well that you are neither a child nor a young man. You are transcendental to everyone, as is your big brother Balram. You have already killed the elephant Kulprida, who was capable to fight thousands of other elephants. You have killed him in a wonderful way. Because of your strength, it behooves you to compete with the strongest wrestlers amongst us. I therefore wish to wrestle with you and your elder brother Balram with wrestling with Mustaka." Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of 43rd chapter of Krishna, the killing of the elephant Kulprida.
So that concludes our hour of Krishna book reading. Srila Prabhupada, thank you for letting us come and read Krishna book to you again. For all of you online, we'll begin with chapter 44 next week, the killing of Kamsa. So let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namo Vishnuvedaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatari. To each other, Vanchakalpatubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Krishna Bhakti Jai.